Honey, Mama.
What is it?
I have to go away for a while. I was told to take a man to a hotel. They said he was an enemy of the state.
Take off your dress.
And in exchange, my mother would get the doctor she needed. Instead, they cut his throat. There could be no witnesses. So they gave me a choice. Die or become a sparrow.
From this day forward, you will become sparrows. Weapons in a global struggle for power. You'll be trained in psychological manipulation. You must learn to push yourself beyond all limitation. Take off your clothes. When we are finished with you, the person you were will no longer exist. Every human being is a puzzle of need. You must become the missing piece, and they will tell you anything.
You have a gift. You know how to survive. This is what you were meant to do. There is a traitor in the government. His last known contact is an American. Get close to him.
I thought I saw you in the pool yesterday.
Are we going to become friends?
Is that what you want? She's a sparrow. You only matter because of what you can do for them. Work with me and make these men pay.
You are better at this than any of us. Your only problem is you have a soul.
We can't trust a word that comes out of her mouth. There's something else we're not seeing.
If she's compromised, she will be eliminated.
What have you done?
You belong to them. They'll never let you go.
I'll find a way.
Hello and welcome back to Joygasm, where we talk about video games, movies, and pop culture. I'm Russ, Xbox Live Toaster 360, and with me is Steve, Xbox Live Stevavitch, as we begin episode 62 today, March 10th, 2018. To get the most out of Joygasm, follow us on your social media of choice and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and SoundCloud.com/JoygasmTV. Also, for exclusive access and some sweet goodies, check us out at Patreon.com/Joygasm. And no matter which platform you use to enjoy the show us some love. We always love getting some love. Anyway, our main focus of today's episode is going to be on the movie Red Sparrow. We just got back from the theater and we are looking forward to be able to kind of dissect it. We want to give a high-level impression of the film itself. So for those of you who have not seen it, if you just want to get kind of a taste, we won't go into any spoilers. And then
after about 5 minutes.
Yeah. Hey, little taste, like I said. But then afterwards, we will go into more of a drill down where we'll talk about cast, plot, cinematography, script, and maybe even a little bit of the wardrobe, perhaps.
It's like if someone gives you a little bit of their ice cream, you're like, "Ooh, that's good. I want more." And then you go, "Nope." Nah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we don't see much of the sunshine on these days that we go into the movies, Russ, because we see them so early.
It's true. No, it's one of the best. Actually, I think it is worth going into how we had kind of a geriatric audience with us this time around. We had just distractions aplenty just surrounding us. Right. It was one of those things where it almost ruined it, but luckily they started to settle down a bit.
Like, didn't you guys see the cell phone M&M's commercial where they said silence your cell phones?
Yeah. We had like a goofy cell phone go off, and we had
nasal rinsing.
We literally had someone doing nasal rinses behind us. There was someone who spilled their popcorn or something behind us. There was also some very loud explanations as to what was happening to some hapless moviegoer who was confused as to what was happening. And so instead of it being discreet and whispery, it was more like for everyone in the audience to understand what was happening.
Thanks, I needed an explanation.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Anyway, I am curious to hear what you think of this movie, Steve. So please indulge me with some of your high-level thoughts.
Well, I think the trailer makers of this movie did a good job in getting some garnered interest. But I think without Lawrence and without some of the beautiful landscaping of Mother Russia, I don't know if I would be too interested in it. I was so. I wasn't. I'm not gonna go out and say I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it was okay for me. There was some stuff I liked and some stuff I didn't like. I'm not gonna say it was. I didn't walk out of the theater feeling like I did when I walked out of Star Wars, thinking that I was insulted. But but I will say left me hanging a little bit. You know, left something to be desired.
Okay.
I haven't. I'll leave that till the end. I have another recommendation if someone wants to see a movie that's like this, but I feel it was a bit better. I'll save that till the end. What did you think?
I liked it. I thought the first thing that was going through my mind was just about how before I saw this movie, I had read a review on IGN. And typically IGN is pretty on the mark with regards to just how my interpretation of a film is when I go and see it. And this time for me personally, it was just completely polar opposite. IGN had given it 2.5 out of 10. I mean, and even like the header that they usually have a word that goes along with that rating, and they said it was bad. I completely disagree. I thought it was a really good film. I don't know exactly. Maybe it was the reviewers, just it wasn't their cup of tea or something. I'm not exactly sure, but I thought there was lots of great talent in the movie. There were all kinds of different actors and actresses in there who we've all recognized from other films, and I thought that the chemistry worked really well. I honestly loved how unpredictable the film was to me. Like I didn't know if it was just me, but like I was driving home with my wife because, you know, my wife came with us and I just started talking to her and she was the same way. Like she had a hard time understanding like who was going to do what or whatever. Like there were multiple instances of, oh, I think I've got this under control. I think that I now know the trajectory of where the remaining part of the movie is going to go. And all of a sudden it would be different. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I don't know. So
maybe I've watched my fair share of spy movies more than you and your wife.
Yeah, perhaps so. Did you find that it was completely predictable?
Not completely predictable, but basically, yeah, I knew roundabout where the mark was going to hit.
Okay.
Yeah.
The music I thought was beautiful. I was thinking about how I need to get that soundtrack just because a lot of it just really, it almost sounded like we were at the ballet throughout the entire movie. I mean, just really pretty music. And I don't know if some of that was from classical music, or if that was all composed from original source. But anyway, that was something that stood out to me. I personally also really loved how it ended. I'm not going to get into that right at this point, but I really appreciate the fact that it was set up for sequels. And that means something just because this movie is based off of a novel that was written by a guy who used to be in the CIA. Did you know that?
I did.
So it was really cool to like see how he wrote this initial book, and then apparently it's a part of a trilogy of books. So I, for one, hope that there will be sequels that will be made for this. So also too, I mean, just from the standpoint of it being a thriller, I thought it was one of the most entertaining thrillers I've seen in quite some time. I've seen, I don't know, the several previous thrillers that I've gone and checked out have been kind of disappointing to me. But this one itself, I was like, I kind of dig this. This is good. So, one final little high-level thought I had is just I thought it was kind of funny seeing American and British actors playing Russians.
Right, yeah.
And I think there actually I know for a fact that there are other actors from different countries as well in there, but I don't really think they actually had like any kind of like born from Russia actors playing these roles, and it's always, I don't know, it's kind of a funny comical thing in its own right. But
Well, sounds like we might have to toss some ideas back and forth, Russ.
toss some ideas for
Yeah,
what do you mean?
It seems like you're a little more on the high bias. I'm a little bit not so high bias.
Bias? What do you mean bias?
Bias of the movie, what we think, how we feel.
Well, I don't know if it's a bias. I just think it's more of a just the movie going experience itself. I mean, it sounds like I enjoyed it more than you did.
Yes.
Because I have nothing to base my bias on. I went to go see a movie. And I feel the same way. So let's go ahead and step into the Russian elevator here real quick.
I love the red curtains that are draping from the 50-foot windows.
Yes. This is a very tall ceilinged elevator.
I left my drink at the bar. It was a white Russian. You get it? Okay.
It's okay. I actually brought my vodka with us. You can have a sip.
Every room in the hotel comes with a mini bar of vodka. Vodka in every room in the hotel. Life is vodka.
You are an alcoholic. Okay, here's our floor. So we're going to go into spoiler alert. Spoilers. Details here. So you have been adequately warned. Let us begin.
Commence.
So let's start off with cast and crew. In my opinion, I thought the cast fit really well. What did you think?
Did you, Russ?
I did.
I thought most of the cast was good. I thought that by and large, Jeremy Irons, even though I do like him as an actor, I didn't really see him fit because I don't know, maybe it was his accent. I mean, he's got the British accent going, and seeing and hearing him trying to do that accent just didn't work like whatsoever. The scenes with him on screen, of course, are always very, very, very confident. I mean, that's kind of who he is. He owns the role, but he even though he owned the role, he didn't convince me that he was from Russia. I mean, he wasn't, but if I could tell. Anybody, all the government officials in Russia could definitely tell he wasn't from there and something was up. So,
which makes sense because he's the mole.
Right. But I mean, they would have been able to tell that something, he was the mole. So with that in mind, I thought, okay, maybe he was miscast. It just wasn't, he didn't convince me.
How about some of the other cast?
Lawrence was okay. I don't know, as much as she went through in the movie, I would think that she would be much more expressive, and she wasn't, which means that I don't know if Lawrence maybe was the right pick or wasn't the right pick to be the main character. But I don't know if she was definitely the wrong pick, but I don't think she was the perfect pick.
I think that they were tapping more into the Russian psyche, if you will. Again, I'm speaking largely from ignorance because I've never been to Russia. I don't have any Russian friends, that sort of thing, though I'd like to have some Russian friends.
I'd like to visit sometime.
I would. But I think as a general rule, at least what has been portrayed is that they tend to not be as emotional, at least on just on wearing their emotions on their sleeve like Americans do. In America, we're very much... we're into expressing ourselves. We're into just speaking our mind, that sort of thing. And I think when it comes to living in a place like Russia, where it's a communist state, you have to really be mindful of what you say. You do not have freedom of speech the way we do here in America. And I think as a result, you have to be calculating. You have to be careful of what it is that you say or do and that sort of thing. And so my way of interpreting it from the movie was just they were really pushing that the whole notion that it was more of an internal thing than it was external.
Yeah, I can definitely see that, but you have to have some emotion, and like Lawrence didn't have really hardly any throughout the entire film. And even with that school that they sent her to, that little training camp, and they're trying to teach her how to manipulate everyone's psyche. Well, part of that is making someone believe that either you're interested in them, you're giving them nonverbal language, which has a lot to do with expression. And minus her dressing or sitting a certain way. She really didn't have much expression, at least that I saw, and a lot of the women actually kind of didn't. Maybe more of the men had expression than the women. But
yeah, I thought in terms of Jennifer Lawrence's performance, I personally thought that she was captivating. I think that, again, I had to like kind of shift a bit of my expectations with regards to how does someone with her character conduct herself? How does she actually emote, especially given the circumstances that she's in? And I think that she did have emotions in a few scenes that were a bit more on the external side. I mean, certainly like when she was being tortured, that was a big moment of emotion for her. But it was, but I liked how it was like just restrained, like when her uncle came to talk to her after she had been tortured and whatnot. There was a display of emotion, even though it was still restrained. To me, it was still palpable, like watching just her realizing just how far her uncle is willing to go just for his own power. So I think that as a result, the character that she played, what is it, Dominica?
Dominica, yeah.
Dominica is really a sympathetic character throughout this film. I mean, you just see these things happen one after the next, and you just think to yourself, my gosh, like this is just such a traumatic experience, no matter what it is. I mean, she had all these different things happen to her, and we'll get more into that when we get into plot. But no, I thought she was really good. Now, the director, who also happens to have the same name as Jennifer Lawrence, Francis Lawrence, I thought he did a great job in the director's chair. He's actually known for other movies like The Hunger Games, Constantine, which I think is a pretty cool movie, I Am Legend, and he's done like a ton of music videos for Janet Jackson, Britney Spears, Pink, Aerosmith, Jennifer Lopez, Green Day, Destiny's Child, Seal, Nelly, the Black Eyed Peas, and others. I mean, like he has this huge portfolio where you could tell he got his start in the director's chair, and now he's making this transition, and he's made a pretty successful transition, I would say, into the movie industry. So what did you think of his directing chops with it?
I thought it was fine. I think for the beginning of the movie, it was better than towards the end. I think towards the end, he was trying to wrap things up. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to say cut some corners, but I don't think it was his, I don't know. To me, it didn't stand out that much.
Okay. I thought the Russian assassin was creepy. I can't remember his name, but he was the guy who was the motorcyclist who came in. We saw him at first. And at first I thought he was kind of intriguing. Just because he comes in, he kills off that one Russian power guy. Jennifer Lawrence is absolutely just
devastated. Right?
Yeah. She doesn't know what is going on. And I liked how they created a sense of mystique about him. My wife actually thought that the motorcyclist was going to be a female. She thought that was going to be like Dominica's first
partner or something.
Well, not partner, but just experience with someone who is like a seasoned Red Sparrow.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be a guy instead. And the guy really held his own. Every time you saw him on screen, I was just like, this dude is not right in the head.
Yeah, but I wanted them to go deeper with him. I mean, in the beginning, you thought, "Whoa, who is this person?" All covered in mystique, all blacked out, cool motorcycle helmet, holding up his finger to his mask.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and having the perfect escape plan. And then, as twisted as he was, he's the one covering Lawrence with a trench coat and a blanket, making sure she's comfortable and warm. And so I think, man, who is this person who just strangled someone and with whatever barbed steel nylon line that was to someone who's comforting somebody else. And then he was, of course, just the hitman for the Russian embassy throughout the movie. But it didn't show, he wasn't...
Well, it wasn't the embassy.
Or not the embassy, but the Russian state, yeah. But they didn't show any more of him, and I wanted to see more. So you saw, okay, here's this person clouded in mystique, and then, oh yeah, he's just twisted and messed up.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would have liked to have seen more. You could tell he was just a soldier of the state. Like, he did precisely what was ordered of him. He didn't have really any emotionality whatsoever in terms of where he had a conflict of interest or anything. I mean, it was just, I need you to go here. He would go there. I need you to carry out this act. He would do so. And to your point, it was really interesting to see how he had this gruesome murder sequence with this, I can't remember his name, but he was like the Russian guy who was raping Dominika.
Right.
He goes from that to then, like you were saying, like, comforting her, giving her like a cigarette and putting a blanket around her, that sort of thing. I would have also liked to have seen that play out a bit more. I would have really liked to have seen more complexities of his character be revealed as a result, but I don't really know like what kind of, like, when they could do that in the film. I don't know what kind of opportunities they could have made in order for that to come through and happen.
What would have been nice is if throughout the movie she is getting these messages that, oh, you're better than the rest, you're 1 out of a million, and it would have been interesting if she maybe had this playing the two guys off one another, the CIA guy and then this Russian hitman. And so no one knew what she was up to, but that to me would have been convincing of that she was a master at her art, her skill. But we never saw that, of course. I think that would have made it a little bit deep for me.
Yeah. Now, Joel Edgerton was believable as the CIA Nate Nash. Did you like him?
I thought he was well cast. I did, especially in the beginning when he's got the passion for doing his job, and that was definitely believable to me. He did a good job. And then the scene I liked best with him was when Dominika. Thank you. I think I'm dominatrix for some reason. A dominatrix. So. She, gets hit by her boss, and she's trying to find a reason, an excuse for him to let her in his room.
Sure.
And so she's up there and tries to play him a little bit, getting really close to him, trying to kiss him. And he sees right through it and just basically says in so many words, I'm not falling for you.
Yeah.
Please go home and figure this out. And I thought, yes, don't take the bait. And then
Don't take the bait.
And then right after his meeting with his superiors, when they just tell him, okay, this is what's up. And he says, yeah, I know where she comes from. And I know the history of the Red Sparrows. I know she's a Red Sparrow. I know what she's going to try and do. And then he just automatically lets his guard down. And I didn't think later in the movie with Lawrence and him that it was convincing at that point. Like up in the beginning, it was great.
In terms of his acting, or are you talking about just the plot?
Actually, both. I mean, with, like I said, with all that information that the CIA had on the Red Sparrows and them knowing that she was a Red Sparrow, I wanted to see a little bit more resistance in his face and his acting. I mean, with the plot, yeah, we can get into that later on, but and you can tell I have an issue with that. But I just wanted to see more resistance with him on his side, with what Lawrence was doing, what her goal was, and all the the unknowns that were out. I mean, he should have been a lot more resistant.
He struck me as someone who was really competent. I was really nervous going into this film, thinking that they would go down one of the typical routes of just CIA operative being hoodwinked or whatever it is. And I really liked how they did a nice job of how he was a seasoned CIA operative. And as a result, he has sixth senses about him as well. I mean, yeah, you have certain programs like the Red Sparrow program where you can develop these really trained assassins and that sort of thing, but they're not the only game in town. You have, like in the United States, for instance, we have our own people as well. So I liked the playoff of that, where the flirtation around the exchange of information, I thought was, I always get a kick out of stuff like that, especially if they do it in a way where it's not trying to make one side look like an idiot. It's just, it's realistic, honestly. Now, Charlotte Rampling as matron, she was of the school, I think it was called like School District 4. She was kind of the head of that, the woman. I thought she was decent, although I don't think there was too much depth to her character either. I think it was interesting to see her be portrayed in such a way where she, her role is to train these young men and women to be these elite assassins. And at the same time, there's a callousness or a coldness that's there. And of course, I mean, it's, if you think about like just a boot camp has parallels to this, although this is meant to be more of an intense training. So there's going to be more psychological warfare with the students versus the teacher, and also some of the school politics of just who's the best student, that sort of thing. It's interesting though how like it was like she was there, she filled the role, but the role itself was just, okay, you're done with that now. Let's move on to something else entirely. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more depth from her character. Although, having said that, I don't really know what else they could have done.
Yeah, they would have had to move the plot forward with her if I think they expected anything else. I think she played her part decently. I mean, she just played the cold, hard instructor.
Yeah.
Kind of soulless at the same time, no warmth. She was as warm as the weather outside.
Yes. Yes.
Which was like 20 below. So she was fine. She didn't stand out, but she didn't do it. I didn't think she did a bad job for the part that she filled.
Moving on to plot.
Oh, here we go.
Here's the meat and potatoes of this. I personally really loved how this movie examines the Cold War in the modern era. I think that in this day and age, with all the different happenings going on that you see and hear in the media and the news and that sort of thing, it's interesting to actually take the time to look at, well, what could happen between these superpowers in the world? What exactly could transpire in a world where people think that the Cold War was just something from like the 80s, the 70s and 80s, that sort of thing. And when in fact there are just as many spies out there in the world, you have a lot of espionage going on, you have the different governments that are vying for power and trying to screw over the other one, that sort of thing. I personally really liked how this movie constantly had that undertone to it. And that's something that I always enjoy with a good thriller such as this. What'd you think, Steve?
It's funny. I keep hearing the word thriller because I just didn't think the movie was thrilling. I just thought it was rather, dramatic, drama style, but not thrilling. I don't know. I felt that it was rather dull. I thought that I think they could have made it deeper, more psychological. They are pushing the Sparrows as being very, very psychological. And I didn't feel like they were being psychological at all. I just felt that in a way, it was like, okay, just like that drunken U.S. senator who was saying like, all the Russian men are like toads and all the women are sexy, I thought, and then I thought, well, in a way, they're portraying pretty much all the men that in the movie as that from Russia as not being wholesome, not having any sort of like moral compass, and all the women are used for entertainment. If it's sexual or it's dancing or something like that, there was no like gray area. It was either like black or white. And I thought, yeah, I can't. Come on, give us something. Give us some neutrality within Russia. Just like United States probably has its own issues. We can have people who are all over the moral compass as well. I just wanted to see more. I thought it was just very predictable. I thought, okay, actually, I thought something was going to happen with her mother because that was pretty much the whole point of her going into this entire story.
That was where Dominica was vulnerable.
Yeah, that was where she was vulnerable, and nothing even happened to the mother. Which okay, that I was predicting something was going to happen to her, and it didn't. But at the same time, I was asking myself, why wouldn't they? I mean, this is a life and death situation, and life is not even precious or meaningful to them at all. And they're willing to take it, no problem. Why wouldn't they leverage her mother? So, and then with, I was going to ask you about the chemistry between the CIA agent and Lawrence's character, because to me it just felt kind of cardboard. I mean, I wanted there to be chemistry. You know, I love chemistry, and we've talked about it with other movies too. And I just there was nothing there that sank. It was just that here it is, and here's the facts about what Red Sparrows are, where they come from, what they do. Here we're at the CIA. We have all the information. We're telling you all the red signs to look out for. Now you're both together, and the guy's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill for you." You know, it's like, what? You guys you were totally on your tiptoes around her and her around him, figuring each other out and knowing that games are being played, and all of a sudden, you're just gonna drop your guard, and that's gonna be that in a wink of an eye.
Well, I think you had several things in there that I think all revolve around one idea, which is that there was a lot that women could identify with from a psychological level, as it applies to Dominica, that I think men don't necessarily pick up on. I think and that's one of the big differences between men and women, is that men tend to look at it as more of a literal translation of things, or an expectation, a literal expectation of how a romance is supposed to play out, for instance, that sort of thing. Women are way more calculating there because they are more, these nurturers, there's more of an emotional creature, if you will, that sort of thing. They're always thinking. Women are smooth in that regard. We're they're always thinking about 10 steps ahead, whereas men don't. I mean, we do in certain capacities, but not on a social level the way women do. And I think when you combine that with the world that Dominica was in, you have to remember that the slice of the perception that was given to us in this movie is based around spies and espionage and governments vying for power, that sort of thing. So as a result, there is a lot of looking over your shoulder. If you live in this world, you're not going to, like I said, you're not going to have your emotions readily available to read on your sleeve. You're going to be very closed off. You're going to be very reserved as to what kind of information you give. Actually in the movie, for me, I felt like there was a pretty strong sense of paranoia almost, just because every time they enter a room, they're looking around. What is the situation? Even the people who may be on their side, there may be some double crossings going on, like we saw with Dominica rooting around in her roommate's area and finding what she had been working on, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of discreet sophistication going on with how they're revealing certain emotions or certain circumstances, I guess you could say, that I thought were cool. And I think, again, I appreciated it because typically I'm like you, where as an American, we have certain expectations of how a romantic relationship should flourish and how it should bud and that sort of thing. We have certain expectations of just how we carry on with people or what our outlook is on life. And this was a very different perspective coming from a different country, a different state of mind, that sort of thing. And so for me, as soon as I made that click in my mind, suddenly a lot more of this stuff for me made sense.
Yeah. I think what I was looking for is, I was going back to scenes with Lawrence and her lack of expression as I was listening to you speak. And I think I wanted more scenes with her showing vulnerability when it wasn't so obvious that, oh, we're going to smack you in the face. We expect you to yell and cry out in pain. Oh, here's your friend who was slaughtered. We're expecting you to be in awe and afraid and whatnot. I wanted scenes with her showing more struggle and showing vulnerability, showing desperation, and I just really didn't get that sense at all. So it's hard for me to connect or even try to connect, even though I'm a guy and she's a girl. I wanted to be able to connect there, and to me that was just kind of lacking.
One of the quotes that stuck with me from the film was when Matron, the school lady, I was calling her the yard teacher or schoolyard, whatever.
The yard duty.
Yeah. One of the things she said, I'm kind of paraphrasing this, but she said America is weakened due to platforms such as social media.
Right.
I completely agree. That one line where she talked about
shopping.
Was it shopping?
Or no, it was both. It was social media and shopping.
The social media part I thought was dead on.
Right.
Because one of the unfortunate detractors about social media like Facebook and Twitter is that it's given a host of opinions a platform. And as a result, we've really discovered that people who we have relationships with, acquaintances with, even friendships with, that sort of thing, people who we thought we had a good idea of who they were and what they stood for is actually not the case. And so what's happened is that you've gotten into this polarizing effect where odds are if you talk to people about their opinion of social media these days, a lot of folks will comment on how divided everybody is.
Right.
How there's no middle ground, how everybody is so stuck on certain ideologies and they allow their emotions to just make themselves just dig their heels in, that as a result, you find that there's not as much of a unity within the country itself. I think that is absolutely dead on with that line from the movie, because America is one of the biggest consumers of social media. If you go to communist countries such as Russia or China,
be careful.
They don't, I mean, their exposure to social media is extremely limited, if at all.
Right.
And as a result, the state has the ability to be able to push its propaganda upon its people. It has the ability to really structure and formulate the propaganda that they want to have their people just be fed with, and as a result allow them to carry out the certain types of actions that they want to with the least amount of resistance as possible.
Right.
So that was something I keyed on. I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell Steve about that.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a nugget. And being from the retail world as I am, and people just going into debt, buying stuff that they don't need. They just want all the time, when they should be wanting to get out of debt and build their finances and build their credits, for later on in their life.
Sure.
And they're not. They're just, people were buying the latest iPhones, and I literally sold like a 6, and then the person would come in the next year, I want the 6S. I'm like, this phone's like only a 0.25% upgrade, and then whatever, $700 more.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I mean, just with the social media obsessed crowd and people wanting to get the ultimate selfie and risk their life. I mean, we got the people across the world gotta laugh at that, know. And to your point with us thinking people are one way and them describing themselves on social media another way. And then at the same time, they might still be the way that you think they are, but they're describing themselves as the way that they aren't. You know, that happens too.
Yeah.
So anyhow.
I appreciate also how Dominica made every decision for the betterment of her and her mother's well-being. It wasn't for Russia. It wasn't for the United States. I mean, if you look at every action she made throughout the film, it was for herself. It was she played her own agenda throughout that whole thing. And I thought that was actually refreshing to see as well, where like, I wasn't sure how she was going to get out of certain situations because it almost seemed like there was entrapment around every corner, but she was able to always, to what her uncle said, she was always able to think one step ahead. Even though for me personally in the theater, like there were several times where I didn't know what was going to happen next. And that was just me. You sounded like you had an idea of what was going to happen all the time. But I I don't know. I just loved, especially at the end when like it goes back through and shows these different pieces that all line up, and all of a sudden she ultimately got what she wanted.
Right.
I thought that was pretty cool.
I thought that's it. Like you're giving your life and your body to the state, and you're mixed in with international espionage, and Russia's only going to take care of you with the cheap small apartment that you're in. Like you get nothing else. And they stayed in the same apartment. I thought they were supposed to move out because the theater stopped paying for all the bills in that place, and they were going to get tossed out.
Well, I think the Russian state took over and started paying their bills.
Yeah, you're right. But I thought that they were. She was going to get something better, or maybe she was going to say, "Okay, well, yeah, get us out of here, give us a better life, uncle, family." You know.
Well, and that was one of the things too that we realized is the fact that people like her uncle were not good people. Like even though they were quote unquote family, he did not behave himself or conduct himself in a manner that was worthy of family. Right. It was very much he was out for his own well-being. It was very selfish, and that's why she was even at one point asking him, so what kind of promotion are you going to get if I pull this off? Yeah, because she could read right through him. She knew what he was trying to do. And I think the ending of it too, it was also, I was satisfied with it because you could tell that she had taken into account the very few people in her life that had a shred of decency, and she didn't sacrifice any of them. She could have if she had taken a different path, but ultimately she routed out her uncle. I think that was the coolest thing about how the mole who was in Russia, he stayed alive. I thought they were going to off him, but they didn't because of the path that she decided to take. Same with the CIA operative, where she was able to save him and not have him get killed. She was also able to continue receiving funds to take care of her mother, and she's in this position within the Russian state where now she has the respect, and they're finally going to back off from her. But again, it's not because she is pro-Russian state government. It's because she now is in a position where then she can continue to do what it is on her terms. And I think that's the part that just makes me grin when I'm in the theater. It's like, okay, that was really, it was mature of her to do that, considering just how much of a brutal character arc we witnessed with just all the different situations that she found herself in. And typically in other types of spy thriller movies, that sort of thing, you always find there's some kind of sacrifice. And in this actually, before I move too fast here, the sacrifices tend to be of someone where you're like, oh man, that's too bad. Like they were the sacrificial lamb for something. But in this case, the sacrificial lamb, so to speak, wasn't a lamb at all. It was her uncle, and he deserved it. It
was the sheep.
Yeah, after everything that he was trying to pull, I mean, that was, for me, that was gratifying.
Yeah, it was definitely gratifying.
The film's also the raw approach to the Red Sparrow program, as well as how controlling the Russian government can be with its citizens, is thought-provoking on different levels. It makes one wonder about the true state of affairs in that country. I know that for people like you and I, like I said earlier, I've never been to Russia. I've always wanted to go and take my camera and take pictures of the architectures. I think the architecture in Russia is gorgeous. It's really unique. But I don't know how that country works exactly. I've had very limited amounts of exposure, and the exposure itself is just really the news. And right. I mean, and we know like how unreliable the news is. So yeah, I'm very curious to see how that works out, because in the past, like when Joseph Stalin was alive, he really ruled that country with an iron fist. There was a lot of brutality where he murdered a lot of his own countrymen as a result. Post Joseph Stalin, though, I don't really have any kind of bearing as to how things are run around Russia itself.
Not how Stalin ran it, though. Let's just put it that. There's not millions of people dying.
No. Yeah. Definitely want to make that clear. But just I'm curious to know just what's life like in Russia. Obviously, they've had economic struggles, they've had economic problems, that sort of thing, and as a result, I've heard that there are drug dealers, the Russian mob, the different types of people who have come into a certain level of power. And as a result, I think that the good citizens of Russia are to a certain extent oppressed, or they have to at least be, once again, really careful about where they go, what they say, that sort of thing. But again, I'd be curious to find out just what the current state is. And even in terms of a communist country, like what is life like in terms of what you have to do for the government? That is a notion that neither one of us know anything about, because we're here in America. We have a very different set of ideals.
Can't be any worse than in North Korea, where people are literally trying to escape the border any way they can to flee to South Korea.
It's difficult to know for sure, because one of the things about Russia that's also, I guess you could say it's unique, is that there is a pride that's there in Russia. If you're a Russian citizen, chances are you really love your country, you believe in your country, but there may be certain figures, certain governmental officials, that sort of thing, who perhaps you have issues with, but due to the structure of how the country works, you really don't have very many options of protesting, that sort of thing. And as a result, I don't know, it just made me, the thought kind of passed through my mind after seeing the film, like, I wonder what it's like there in terms, like, is it really that oppressive, or is it just for the sake of cinema?
Right.
I thought that also, in terms of plot, it was messed up seeing all the wrongdoings happening to her life, starting with the ballet injury. I mean, that
sucked.
Oh my gosh, it looked like it hurt so bad. Where like I think her leg was broken.
Oh, it was broken in many places.
Landed on her leg, and it was just, oh my gosh. And then after that, so first that happens, and you realize this is the job that she has, where she's able to pay for the apartment that she and her mom live in. And now that's been squashed because her leg is just absolutely just done in. And then on top of that, you can tell that like there was some kind of boyfriend, girlfriend, romantic relationship between her and this other dancer. And you come to find out that he has this other ballet girl who he's been cheating on Dominica with. And they kind of plotted this whole thing as it went down in the first place. And then it just snowballs from there in terms of like how she's trying to do her uncle a favor on this thing. And all of a sudden she gets raped, and then she's going to this school, and she's being told to do away with a lot of the morality and common decency that you've been brought up with. You're just a vessel for the state, and yada yada. She almost gets raped again in the school, and all the while it's like all she wants to do is take care of her mom, and also just feeling helpless throughout the whole thing with trying to figure out just how she can deal with both Russia and the United States.
Yeah,
their special interests.
After our Patreon bonus episode, we when you were telling me about going to Colombia and how people show trust with a greeting by, they'll give like, air kisses on either side of the cheek.
Right. Yeah.
So I thought of that in the beginning, because when that scene right before she broke her leg, she does it twice on each cheek twice.
Yep.
One like left, right. And I thought, okay, so as a dance partner,
they're tight.
They're tight, and there is a lot of trust because you're lifting all their weight and you're throwing them around. And I've been there a little bit with the swing dancing that I've done. So I keyed on that. I thought, she definitely trust him. And then he let her down. With that school later on, I thought that was a bit surreal, though. I mean, what I wanted to see was more skill being learned, and not just the doing away with their morality.
Right.
And it was, I think her mom made a reference like we all are their whores.
Yeah.
I think was her comment. And I thought, so is she going to a brothel or like a state-run brothel? Like what?
Well, again, that's too much of a literal translation. It was a figure of speech in the sense that like,
I know it was a figure of speech, but if there's men and women in this school, and they're going to be used as these tools to manipulate international governments. And there's a lot more to that than saying, okay, if someone just wants to rape you, then just let them do it because then you can get on the inside. And that's what the overall impression, the overarching impression of that school was. They didn't really learn much more. I mean, you saw her pick a lock, but that was about it. Yeah. Although one cool thing out of that school was when the instructor did bring her up in front of the class and say, okay, she was just trying to break her that last time when she beat the crap out of the guy who tried to get her in the shower. And then she says, okay, let him have you. And then she works his mind in a way that she's looking at him and, and she basically, flattens his ego. And so that he can't do anything. He feels like a little, ant compared to her. And she's just completely vulnerable. So I thought that was the one redeeming value, but I just wanted to see.
Well, and that plays into the idea that you have a tool of, well, not a tool. You really have a toolbox full of these different psychological tools that you can use, and that's what the movie was examining, is just how everyone is a puzzle of need. And I that was another line from the film that I really enjoyed, just this whole notion that like once you can figure out their puzzle, then you can get them to do your bidding. You can do whatever you want to do, because at that point you've completely road mapped out any individual. And so it was neat to see how like some people just wanted sex versus some people wants power, or there's a codependency that's there, or whatever it is. Like there are certain different types of scenarios that where if you engage correctly, then I think for me, I would have liked to have seen more than that, because they focus too much, I think, on those two areas of just, seduction and power, that sort of thing. I would have liked to have seen more in other areas too, because people are not that one dimensional. I mean, yeah, you do have people who do respond to those two areas, but I think that there is more out there for that too.
They just kind of gave the obvious and that was about it. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly right. I wanted to see, I mean, there's a lot more needs that people have than just power, sex. Yeah. I mean, people want kindness, for crying out loud. I mean, if she even showed kindness to someone to get their loyalty, and she didn't even have to go to the level of opening herself up. Right. No, I
totally agree. I think that showing like kindness, what you said, or like I said, like having a realization that there's someone who has a codependency behavior, so then you can play into that. Right. Or if someone is depressed and you want to be kind of the shining light or the angel that will help them up, essentially you want that person coming to you for that fulfillment
and to trust you.
Yeah. Right. The other thing I think is worth mentioning too is that the school itself, the District 4 or whatever it is, it was interesting to just see what happened at that school, because I kept getting these vibes of almost like a concentration camp or a prison. But then they would back off kind of at the height of that vibe that I would get. And it would remind me, oh, right, this is a training facility. This is not a prison. It has very rigid rules. Their program is brutal, and just it's designed to break a person down completely and rebuild them back up into the way that the state wants. But it was interesting to see just how these people sacrificed who they were, just had to do away with that. And I liked also how Dominica's mother warned her, saying, make sure you keep a piece of yourself way down deep inside. Don't give everything that you have to the state, because you'll lose who you are as a result.
Right. Do you recognize who her mother was, the actress who she played in?
I don't know her name, but I recognized her from the TV show Nip and Tuck. Yeah. Or Nip Tuck.
Nip Tuck. Yeah, she was in Nip Tuck, and then she was...
on the Patriot.
She was in The Patriot, exactly.
Yeah. She was Mel Gibson's love interest.
Right.
So going on to script, I mean, there's not too much I have on script other than the dialogue was fluid and engaging. There were certain lines, like I mentioned already, regarding social media and the other one as well. So did you have anything to add to script?
Yeah, I wanted to see more Russian speaking. I mean, we're like the
subtitles.
Subtitles, yeah. I mean, we're in Russia, for crying out loud. Otherwise, everyone's speaking English.
That's true. That's true.
I mean,
I found myself thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the one line, I'm like, thank goodness people speak English all over the world. Woo! Internet, it's so much easier to fit in. But yeah, the one line we were fed was from her boss, her pig boss.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. And I thought
That was really funny though when they were in that hotel room.
Yeah.
And she's telling Dominica about what she wants to do to the U.S. Chief of Senator Staff or whatever it was.
I thought that was funny when the one line that what's his face dude, the CIA dude, when the director says, I have to make a distraction, and she knocks on the door and she just basically says, do they need the mini bar refreshed?
Right.
And he goes, oh yeah, nice accent you put on there. And I thought, yeah, that's with everybody on this movie.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty funny.
Cinematography, I have a fascination. I mentioned this earlier in the program, but I have a fascination with Russian architecture and decorations. Every scene that we saw where we were in some sort of ballet amphitheater, or there was some sort of governmental building, or even the apartments that they were in, there's a lot of beauty to Russian architecture that I for one really appreciate. Also, as a result too, you could tell that the cinematographer focused on the architecture of Russia itself. It didn't matter if you were in a hospital room, or you were in a club, or you were in some sort of old fancy building of some sort, or even a modern building too. There was a lot of character in there that made it for me more believable as this being kind of an international spy story. And Joe Willems was the name. Yeah, he was the cinematographer of the film. So I give kudos to him. I think that the film itself was just nicely framed, a lot of just really beautiful light and shadow situations and that sort of thing. What'd you think?
I thought it was one of the film's saving graces, was the cinematography. Everything was beautiful. I loved the on-location views, locales, and I liked a lot of the I liked a lot of the Russia in it. The architecture, the tile work, the big draping curtains. If they were in some place, like some 5-star incredible hotel, you knew it was there, man. It was like, wow, this place is expensive. The ornate doors and the carving, and
of course we're assuming that all those sequences were filmed somewhere in Russia. It could have easily been somewhere else in Europe or even the United States. We have no idea, but we're guessing, just based on what we saw. If that's the case, then that's beautiful.
Right. Either way, good job making the set, or good job being there, actually.
Even the grungy areas too, like the apartment she was in, where a lot of the walls had lots of scratches and scrapes, and the paint was flaking off. All that stuff. I just dig all that.
Do you dig it, Russ?
I do. So actually, one of the things I love doing is taking my camera out. If I go to like a junkyard or something to that effect, there are.
You'll go to junkyards often. No, you do.
Not often. But I have gone to them with my camera, and actually, it's one of the things that I've learned to really just think is cool. It's like back in the day before I went to college, I would look at that as just a worn down place. I'd kind of think of it with disdain, that sort of thing. But after going to college and taking photography classes and realizing, hey, there's a lot of character that comes into that. It's not something that necessarily I would want for my house or something to that effect, but just on a more of an artistic level, it's something that I appreciate. So the soundtrack was mentioned earlier in the program, and I thought the music was beautiful. It was done by James Newton Howard, who I'm a fan of. I've liked his previous works, and I think I said this already too, but I really loved how it sounded like a ballet throughout the film. It really almost gave like the spy espionage story kind of a ballet twist, as if you saw this whole thing going on a stage.
Right.
Only they were not as graceful, or wore those outfits that make your bits and pieces squished.
Assets. Your assets.
So what'd you think, moving on to the costumes here, what did you think of Dominica's wardrobe?
I like Dominica's wardrobe. It's colder by a long shot over there, and I thought they kept her very, very fashionable. Not too over the top, but fit her role very, very well, as should be expected by the government trying to sway opinion, get attention,
Right.
That sort of thing. So I'm not going to go as far as to say it was over the top. I think over the top would be too much. Over the top would be too much.
Yeah.
But sometimes you could just tell, like, yeah, okay, they concentrated on just her, and like that was it. They gave her. It's obvious they made her try and stick out, and they didn't. They made her look like she was a lady who respected herself, had good taste in clothes,
Took pride in her appearance.
Maybe had a little bit of money. But it wasn't like, for example, that pool scene with her in that bikini. That was a bikini that
Real tasteful.
it was very tasteful. Yeah, it showed off her body a little bit. It wasn't like it was the thinnest thong you've ever seen before. You know, it wasn't.
It was
over the
actually
top.
pretty conservative, all things
Right.
considered.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't think that there were any other characters other than Dominica who really stood out. Everyone else just kind of had the outfits that you would expect. So, but for her, she definitely had a sense of style, and I digged it. I thought a lot of what she wore was fun and stylish and cool and that sort of thing.
And warm,
especially considering the climate that she was in. So, in conclusion, I'll go first. I think that there is a maturity present in this film that you don't see very often. I hope that they make the sequels, as the novel this movie is based on, as part of a trilogy. And actually, I'd like to be able to buy the book, because the book itself is, it was written by a CIA agent or former CIA agent. And so I think that it'd be a fun read. And it may be very different in terms of just what
most likely
the details are that he added in there. And it may actually apply to some of the things that you had issues with regards to the film itself.
I hope so.
What about you, Steve? What's your conclusion about the film?
Well, I overall, I just felt it was kind of dull. I felt that one of the main attractions to the film was basically Jennifer Lawrence, with all the innuendos and kind of disrobing scenes that they had in the film. I thought they could have spent it making the film actually deeper, making the chemistry better, maybe not so cookie cutter or convenient, or maybe even shallow. So in the end, I don't know if I would feel per se entertained. It was not terrible, but I'd probably tell someone to watch it on Netflix rather than go out to the theater and see it. Mm-hmm. There's kind of no point to pay the extra price, in my opinion, to go see it in the theater.
Well, very polar opposite opinions here. I do have some fun Red Sparrow trivia courtesy of IMDb. So before we give our final ratings, let me just go through these. Not too many, but there are some in here that I thought were mentionable. Jennifer Lawrence got into a bar fight in Budapest while filming this movie.
Breaking beer bottles over people's heads.
Yeah.
Throwing chairs.
Again, with more feeling. Based on a 2013 novel of the same name by retired CIA operative Jason Matthews. Before the novel was even finished, Matthews sold the film rights for a 7-figure sum. The novel is the first book in a trilogy, with the others being Palace of Treason and The Kremlin's Candidate. That's kind of...
Hopefully that made him a nice pretty penny there, Ross.
Well, 7 figures.
My name's Matthews. Agent Matthews.
There you go.
0045678910.
To prepare for the role, Jennifer Lawrence did ballet and practiced a Russian accent for 4 months, spending 3 hours a day working with the Hollywood ballet instructor, Kurt Froman. She said it was difficult because she had never wanted to dance ballet.
Back to the accent thing, I kept on thinking how back to Black Panther, how Chadwick's accent was way convincing.
Sure.
Like he owned it. I thought, Lawrence, get the same accent coach.
Yeah, she was not as convincing as Chadwick.
Right.
I thought she was decent, but there were certain instances where I think it dropped a little bit.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The Russian characters are played, here you go, Steve, by American, British, Belgian, Dutch, German, and Ukrainian actors. The main American actor in the movie, Nate Nash, the character, is played by, of course, as we said already, Joel Edgerton. Let me see here. Yeah, I believe it's pronounced Edgerton, who is Australian. So yeah,
All over the place.
yeah, no Russians. American ballet dancer Isabella Boylston was Jennifer Lawrence's dance double in the movie. I'm not too familiar with who Isabella is, but
She can dance.
she can definitely dance, that's for sure. And finally, Jennifer Lawrence's real-life best friend, Laura Tarnowski, has a cameo in the film as the woman sat at the hotel bar with Dominica in London. So a little fun trivia there for you.
Nice intro into the biz.
Yeah. So, Steve,
What?
I am curious. How many stars would you give Red Sparrow?
I would say about 2.5.
2.5 stars, he says. All right. Fair enough.
Yes.
I am going to give Red Sparrow 3.5 stars.
Okay. A full point different than mine.
Yes.
Russ, I said in the beginning I wanted to tell you about a movie that I saw that was very, very similar to this. And I think I even mentioned it on a previous episode when we were looking at the trailer to Red Sparrow. And that movie is Salt with Angelina Jolie. If
Right.
you liked this film, you're going to love Salt.
Did you like Salt more than Red Sparrow?
I did, yes, indeed. Yes. I would probably give Salt 3.5 stars.
Oh.
Yes.
Well, I may have to take a little look-see. Maybe I'll watch it tonight since I'm in this kind of spy thriller frame of mind.
Indeed.
Well, I think that about wraps it up here. Be sure to check out patreon.com/joygasm and subscribe to get the most out of the show. Also, you can follow us on social media and YouTube. Just do a search for Joygasm TV. In addition to iTunes and Android, you can listen to our podcast on TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and SoundCloud.com/Joygasm TV. Last but not least, search Joygasm TV on Twitch to see us stream our gaming adventures live every Wednesday evening at 9:30 Central Time. Until next time, I don't even know what to say.
I was trying to say, I'm trying to think of what goodbye is in Russian.
I know. I'm
Goodbye.
We'll see you next time.